What is the emotional benefit from being clean and sober? Joe Might's in the house from St. Gregory's Retreat Center. Today, live on The View from a Pew on KTA.
Let's get it started. Ha! Let's get it started in here. Let's get it started. Ha! Let's get it started in here. Yeah.
Let's get it started in here.
Welcome to The View from a Pew, a conversation among Christians who are out to grow their faith by asking the simple questions, the tough questions, and the stuff you really wish your pastor would talk about. Come on now, let's reason together. It's your voice we want to hear. The phone lines are open, so join the conversation. Call 855-244-0077. That's 855-244-0077. Now, here's your host, J. Michael McCoy.
4 minutes after the hour on this Recovery Monday, Joe Mites from St. Gregory's in the house. Bob Montserrat, the cat in the hat, watching the chat. And, of course, Father Tattoo running the shoe. Ooh, I just rhymed.
Nice.
Really big shoe.
Father Tattoo running the shoe.
Nice.
Which is kind of a, who is that guy?
Ed Sullivan?
Ed Sullivan. Got a really big shoe for you tonight. See, you're too young to remember Ed Sullivan, right?
Once again, I'm pretty sure he was on the History Channel, and I think I did see something about that.
That's right. That's right.
I'm really feeling my age now.
Yeah, I know. You and I both. All right. So today on Recovery Monday, you know, we all have an idea of the benefits of being clean and sober for your body, for your liver, for your mind, for your kidneys, for your respiratory system, for your immune system. But today we're going to talk about the benefits of being clean and sober from an emotional standpoint. This hit me over the weekend as my wife and I faced what would have been a difficult decision or difficult situation for us. And we handled it quite differently than we had before. And that's because I didn't react to it the way I would have before. And I think it's very important that we sit back and talk about the impact that we have on other people's lives when we're not completely in control of our faculties. And when you're not clean and you're not sober, you're not completely in charge of your faculties. Now, you may say, yeah, but I just have a couple beers a night. Well, why do you have a couple beers? I mean, if it's for the taste, why don't you go, what do they call it, near beer? Is that what they call the non-alcoholic beer?
Right, correct.
Well, it's just not the same. I like to get a little buzz. So you do like how it makes you emotionally unstable. Oh no, I'm mellow out. I'm a peach. So it changes you in a way that you can't change yourself. And then, of course, usually people get defensive and they get critical, and because having 2 beers every night is not an alcoholic. And it's not a big problem. And I'm not being sarcastic. That's true for most people. So what's the emotional benefit from being clean and sober? Now, Joe, you've got hundreds of people that come in and out of St. Gregory's. What do you think some of those customers how would they answer that question? The emotional benefits of being clean and sober.
And frankly, a lot of them would answer that with scary. That's really what addiction does. That's how it serves you. Is it gets to really help you put blinders on to the emotional difficulties in life, and just like there's cognitive stunting or physical stunting, all kinds of things.
Stunting?
Addiction, yeah, just a slowing down or a barrier to that growth. Addiction really serves very much in the way of emotional stunting. It really stunts your emotional growth. And there's a lot of people, especially in the rooms and in lots of different recovery circles, will really talk about how you're as old as you were the day you became addicted emotionally or mentally. And a lot of the reason is, and I've talked about this a lot, I really do believe that people learn how to be who they are. You learn to deal with stress, you learn to deal with relationships, you learn to deal with all kinds of things, and that kind of shapes your character. It shapes how you are, who you are, how you react to life, all of those things. Now, when you start talking about the emotional factor, that's the hard one. That's the one that everybody's most scared of, because it's those emotions that you get to escape from when you're drunk or when you're high. You're really not feeling those the way that you would. It doesn't require an in-depth engagement to your emotional health when you get to just use alcohol or drugs and make all that go away. And that really is the core of recovery is, okay, let's actually confront where you are emotionally as a person. And, we talk about social skills and things like that, but those emotional skills are really what lead to the big payoff in the end. And people always say, well, what's the point of being sober, or what's the point of rehab? It's not sobriety. It's the rest of your life. That's the point. And the rest of your life, if you're going to find fullness or, that fulfillment, it's going to come from healthy, positive, growing relationships.
Yeah,
that's what we're learning. So.
I always like what you say, that you when you're sober, clean and sober, you can become the person God intended you to be.
Right.
And you can't otherwise.
Right. And, I just believe that unless I'm trying to recall the quote from C.S. Lewis, I always forget it when I need it, but right. I'll lay in bed and think about it all night. But it really has everything to do with, be as innocent as doves and wise as serpents. And, it really, when you're in the middle of all of the junk, you really need your faculties about you to really walk that walk that Christ intends for us. And when we've got an addiction in the way, it's really just a barrier to keep us from doing that to the fullest. And that's a difficult thing to do. But once you're sober, now all of those things are on the table. Now they're all right in your face. And it's now I'm going to have to actually learn, how do I deal with my emotional faculties? How do I really grow emotionally as a person and really evolve and fulfill this being that I'm created to be? And that's really where it all comes from, is your emotional health. How are you able to really engage in those relationships? And that's a really big deal. And I'll tell you what, that's absolutely been the most surprising and well-rounded, most fulfilling aspect of my recovery that couldn't have been more of a surprise to me.
That you were emotionally mature enough to now handle these situations.
Yeah, I mean, that's been the blessing of the journey for me, is how do you, well, let me put it this way. When I was using drugs, I was nowhere near a productive member of my family. I didn't get the benefits of being in a family because I was doing everything I could to kind of be outside of that. I was never really able to formulate a real relationship with who's now my wife. All of those things were kind of this abstract notion of something that I had.
Were you using when you were married to her?
No.
So she's always known you as clean and sober.
Nope. She was right along with me for quite a while on the dark side.
All right.
But, it was one of those things, and that's a really rare one, too. You usually don't see somebody come meet on that side of the street and end up together still on the other. That usually goes to the wayside pretty quickly.
That's true.
But for ours, it was absolutely a divine intervention, and, it really was a big deal. But, once we did come together on the other side and addictions were no longer a part of our relationship, now it's something where you actually have to learn how to emotionally bond and grow together. And that's a hard thing, especially for somebody who hasn't had any practice in it for 10 years like I had. So.
I remember when I was thinking about getting sober, because for me, excuse me, I'm sorry, I've got a bug in my throat today. For me, I had to decide to think about getting sober. That was too scary of a thought to think about it. I'm not going to do that. I'm just not. I may, 9 o'clock at night, I'm not thinking about it. 9 in the morning, oh yeah, I need to do that. 9 o'clock the next night, I'm not going to do that.
Right.
So when I was thinking about getting sober, I was given the names of a couple of prominent business people here in town who certainly don't live in the shadows of a 12-step program, but there's a reason it's called Anonymous. And I was sitting with one of these guys at Perkins one afternoon having a cup of coffee, and somehow the topic of marriage came up, and he said, your marriage probably won't make it.
Yeah.
Most marriages do not make it through one or both parties getting sober.
Yeah.
They had certain emotional attachments and habits that they got used to, and now with one party or both parties clean and sober, you won't know how to
Right.
manipulate that. Well, my wife and I made it through those waters really well. And I had a guy tell me once it was because when we got together, I was not drinking.
Yeah.
I started drinking 9 years after we got together. So
she got you back.
She got me
opposed
back.
to was surprised by who you actually are.
well, and she would tell you that she got a better guy back.
Yeah.
Because I had the
Yeah.
borderline personality disorder. So I got through that and got through the alcoholism at the same time.
Yeah.
But we had a situation this weekend where there was trouble in paradise with one of our kids and their kids.
Mm-hmm.
And that would have been something that Big Mac would have just like a typhoon gone in and told my child how to handle it and told the grandchild how to handle it and da-da-da-da-da-da. And I stayed out.
Wow.
And it was such a awesome feeling because it felt natural to stay out. I can remember making choices to stay out of other things that came up, and it was hard.
Yeah.
And angst. I should be in the middle of this and checking on it. No, that it was the right thing to do, and I knew that. And that was how I came up with the topic for today's show. That was an emotional benefit of being clean and sober, that I was actually able to look at a family situation and say, that's none of my business.
Mm-hmm.
I can make it my business, but it's none of my business.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's going back to the notion that most marriages don't make it, and that's such a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
And you really are right. And I would really point to, I think a big reason why that is. When you get married, everybody, it's not very often where you're going to have a ceremony where the pastor or whoever's officiating doesn't remind the newlyweds to make sure that Christ is at the center of their relationship, and that's really where your eyes are settled. But when you've got an addiction, it's so overwhelming. The addiction is the center of your relationship.
Absolutely.
That's how you learn to deal with each other, is around this thing.
Yeah.
And when that's gone, it's such a strange notion. I remember when I got back from treatment, it was the second night I was home, and the first night, we were at my family's house and all of those things, and didn't have much time. But the second night, there was nothing going on, and we found ourselves kind of sitting on the couch looking at each other like, well, what should we do? We had no idea what life was even going to look like. We had no idea who each other really were.
Yep.
That was the center of our lives for years. And it's so strange when you have to, I will say this, yes, going through an addiction, you are emotionally stunted for that period of time. But boy, what a springboard if you can really get a handle on it into really getting some good insight on life.
Yeah.
Because retrospect, if you're able to make it through to the other side of that, and you can kind of look back, things seem to be a lot more in place for a lot of circumstances than you would even believe for a lot of people. So it's kind of an odd thing. I would never go so far out on the line as to say, I was blessed to have experienced it.
Sure.
But I do have the blessing of the experience, if that makes any sense.
Sure.
As far as the differential. But it's a very strange thing when you get to relearn about who you actually as a person are too. So it's pretty an amazing experience.
Joe, does the male have more problem adjusting emotional, or the female, or
we're all idiots, at the end of the day. If left to our own devices, none of us are very smart, male or female, I would say. It's just different dynamics of how you adjust to it. Female, we've always kind of found, just in the addictions world, and this would be really kind of leaning more heavily on the psychology aspect of it. Again, I wouldn't say more, but in different ways. So a female perspective, they're going to have a bit more of a tendency to be that codependent in the relationship, the caring, nurturing one. And when that's misplaced into something that can be harmful, not that they've recognized that it was or anything like that, but I know there was certainly a time where at that time, my girlfriend and I were horrible for each other. She would try to make sure that, nobody hurt my feelings if they called me an addict, and I would try to make sure that nobody hurt her feelings. So
Joe Mines from St. Gregory's Retreat Center is in the house. When we come back, you just heard something scary, that your relationship is going to change if you get clean and sober. Can you handle that? The answer is yes. We'll talk about it.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
If you choose to obey the power of sin, it leads to death. If you choose to obey obedience, it leads to righteousness.
Forgiveness is just the beginning of life in Christ. God wants us to live for Him now.
And because of Jesus Christ, the gospel was preached, and you and I are blessed today because of Abraham. Did you know that? We're blessed.
Experience Truth, 99.3 FM.
Drug and alcohol addiction slowly steals a person's identity, tearing away pieces of their life little by little until one day it seems like the hope of a happy future is gone and there's no chance of getting it back. Here at St. Gregory Retreat Centers, we can assure you that there is hope. Our unique approach to recovery begins with the understanding that the dysfunction and damage caused by addiction can be overcome, not just dealt with. Don't let another day go by. Call St. Gregory today.
Fight the good fight on a Rebels Cause Radio, Thursday evenings at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time on a rebelscause.com. A Rebels Cause Radio is edutainment.
Whether you're 10, 25, 50, 80 years old and beyond, everyone needs to live within their means. I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America. For almost a quarter of a century, we've helped people of all ages learn to manage their personal finances to benefit them far into the future. When problems arise, we've got the experience you need to make those debt problems go away. Got financial problems? Call Consumer Credit of America.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
The only way we come to know the Saviorship of Jesus Christ is by bowing and acknowledging that He is Lord and King over all the earth.
Jesus Christ died on a cross, paid the penalty for our sin, and by repenting of our sin and accepting Him by faith, what He did for us, we are forgiven.
Salvation is not a combination of faith and works. Salvation is by faith alone in God.
Experience Truth, 99.3 FM.
We've got questions. You've got the answer. Join the conversation. It's your voice we want to hear. So call 855-244-0077. Now, here's J. Michael McCoy.
21 minutes after the hour on this gorgeous day here with Joe Meintz from St. Gregory's Retreat Center. Bob, Bob Montserrat, the cat in the hat, watching the chat. And let me see if I can do that again. Father Tattoo running the shoe. Ooh. Oof. Ooh.
Ooh. And it's a really good shoe.
And it is. We're talking today about the emotional benefits from being clean and sober. And I put it on my Facebook. And some guy came back and said, well, you can find a nice lady in church. And that's true. Because when you're out running around in the bars and the nightclubs, and that's where you think you're going to meet the perfect spouse, chances are that's not the place you're going to meet the perfect spouse. You may meet a one-night stand, but that's probably not the person that God has in store for you, although I could be wrong, because He'll put you together wherever they are. But there is so many benefits from being clean and sober. And somebody sent me an email. Oh, Joe, I should have told you about this, because this was right after our show last week. That did I consider someone who takes sleeping pills every night as someone who is not clean and sober? And if you recall, on our little road trip, I talked to you about that, because I take Lunesta every night. Mm-hmm. And there are different schools of thought on that. What is your thought?
You know, there's, if you're taking something for the actual benefit of what it gives you, and you can't sleep without it, or, whatever the case may be there, fine. I mean, be careful with it, because they do have some, they can lead up to some pretty serious side effects. But what we really see that I would put in the addictions category is people that are really going overboard, and if you are, I mean, if you're if you're taking a handful of them throughout the day, then yeah, we got a different issue there.
Yeah,
and that's really the issues.
And so what would the negative side effects be? That you couldn't get up in the morning, that you needed some type of stimulus in the morning to get you past the wearies?
No, not necessarily. I mean, when it starts crossing over into an addiction, we're going to have some chemical dependency issues, and you're going to have withdrawal issues. A lot of those, depending on which, you're going to have really similar side effects and withdrawal symptoms to benzodiazepines like Xanax and those types of things. But for the most part, you're probably safe. But what it really speaks to is that there's something else that's off balance. You theoretically should not need a sleep aid every night. We're made to be able to go to sleep. There's something else going on, and it's amazing what you can find just nutritionally that's really kind of off kilter a lot of times. But there's also, I would definitely point people towards some more holistic approaches than really going for the big guns with Lunesta and Ambiens and things like that. There's lots of stuff out there.
I take a sleep aid every night.
Do you?
Melatonin.
There you go.
But that's natural.
Sure.
There you go.
That's naturally produced by your pineal gland, and if you get my age, then it doesn't do it.
So you just add to it.
Yeah.
If, and maybe there's no yes or no on this answer, but if somebody comes to St. Gregory's and their addiction is pills, or it's alcohol or meth or something like that, if they bring sleeping aids, do you allow them to take them?
No, we don't. And for a few reasons, because they do have mood altering properties. And what we really find, and this is one of the odd caveats of addiction, I guess. But what really people are looking for, and we've talked about this a lot, just as a cultural thing, it becomes a mindset thing. You're looking for a solution in pill form a lot of times.
Okay.
And we try to make sure that as much of that is off the table as possible. And also when we're interjecting the medications, it really throws off our accurate view of what's actually happening with you physiologically. It is going to impact the neurotransmission cycles. So when we're working with amino acid therapies to build up, your dopamine and serotonin and all of those things, everything that we pile on top of that is going to alter the effect somehow. So we really try to get to the most natural baseline as possible. And also, if we did use sleeping aids, then we would be using them for everyone. Because especially for really heavy alcohol users, heavy opiate users, so heroin, OxyContin, things like that, one of the real issues that they deal with when they become sober, at least through that withdrawal period until their body's had a chance to really rebalance itself, is insomnia. And especially with the opioids, not necessarily so much at St. Gregory's because we do a lot to address it, but a lot of times, say you get caught on the streets with opiates and thrown in jail, they're usually not going to treat you to a nicely designed medical detox. They'll stick you in a cell and let you kick on your own. And these guys, a lot of times, depending on the severity of their usage, will go sometimes 1 to 2 weeks with hardly sleeping. That's just kind of the nature of the beast when you get into opioids. So we really want to make sure that we're focusing on the natural body rebalancing and body healing remedies, if at all possible. So
yeah, because you put your patients through some type of serum. That's what I always call it, but probably the wrong term.
Sounds so
I know,
devious.
but it helps to connect reconnect some of the connectors in your brain.
What it really does is it provides what your body needs to rebuild those connections and to formulate the chemical structures that it needs. So it's really an intensive repair process is the best way to look at it. So. And we don't want to put anything in the middle of that that's going to alter that process.
Now, why, maybe you can't answer this, why don't other treatment centers use that?
Well, some do. It's started to pick up quite a bit in the last couple of years. We've always kind of tried to pride ourselves on being bold. If we find research that shows something's going to be beneficial, we want to start using it now and really take a look at those things. But for the most part, it really goes to the philosophical underpinnings of the addictions field as a whole. The medical community, they don't like anything natural for the most part.
Right.
Most of that is just pharmacology, and they're trying to give you a drug for another drug, and fix addiction with these drugs of addiction. The psychological community, they are the ones that usually get much more bare bones than we do even. And a lot of times you'll find, especially we always call them old school rooms guys, those guys that have been involved with AA for a really long time. It used to be if you take an Advil, you're not considered clean and sober anymore. So some of those guys are even on a farther spectrum than we are. But all we really care about is, look, let's help you heal.
Yeah.
Let's figure out what exactly is going on here and get you where you need to be and stop relying on a pill for everything.
I've heard that at meetings, that there are some old line guys who, you can't, you can't take. I mean, if you have high blood pressure, you got to get off those meds. If you sleeping pills, pain pills, Advil, the clean and sober means clean and sober, and their point is that it's a gateway drug.
Yeah.
That if you start using a high blood pressure medicine, then you're going to justify using a Oxycontin to do this, and then you're going to start drinking. And I don't know if that's true. I have no idea.
Well, I don't know. I guess I have a problem with medication for blood pressure.
Yeah. It's a really short rope to pretty irrational in some cases. So.
Yeah, I mean, there are some real hardline old guys, and women who will just say, no, I can't. I don't do anything now.
Yeah.
To the point where there's when they go to a restaurant, their food cannot have been cooked in a wine of any kind.
Oh,
my favorite meal at Biaggi's is calamari, and they cook it in wine. And a buddy of mine from my 12-step program works at Biaggi's, and so I went in there one day and ordered it, and he leaned over and whispered in my mind. He said, "This is sautéed in wine." I said, "I don't care."
Well, yeah, you wouldn't have any alcohol in there.
No, it would all burn out.
Right.
But, I remember when I was growing up in the Episcopal Church, and I don't believe this, but they said that an alcoholic could drink consecrated wine and would not get drunk off of it. I just don't believe that, but I'm not going to go give it a test.
Look, now that's a theological issue, and now we're talking about what is it? The transubstantiation or something?
Yeah.
Transubstantiation.
Huh? Oh, thanks for joining us.
He fixed it.
Nice to have you here.
Do you notice how well your show is running right now? You've got names up and everything.
You're doing a really good job.
I can join you, or I can do a good show for you.
Just do a good show.
Okay.
You're fine. Do you have an announcement to make, by the way?
No.
No? Okay. Joe Mites from St. Gregory's is here, along with Father Tattoo running the shoe and Bob Monster at the Cat in the Hat watching the chat. Phew. I'm going to sound like Dr. Seuss before I'm done. And I'm J. Michael McCoy, and we're talking today about the emotional benefits of being clean and sober. And we were talking for a little bit about marriages and relationships. And it's true that when two people are involved in a relationship, and I'm just going to say married, and one of them is the only one that has any type of consumption issue, addiction, whatever, when that person gets sober, that relationship may not exist.
It may not. And what it really depends on is making sure that the two people are on board with the types of changes that are happening.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times where you see the difficulty is when somebody's coming through the process of recovery, what they're really working on is their perspective. They're really working on, it's a worldview of what things really mean to them. And when those start to change, that really does provide the underpinning of that person being a different person, so to speak, than the one that their spouse formerly had known. So just being together in that process is a big issue. It's really a communication issue. But I know that
Webcast One Live,
where we have seen very, very difficult results, we'll have a husband and wife both seeking treatment at the same time. We know that if we can get them both to St. Gregory's, they're going to have an incredibly more successful time just because they're both learning the same perspective. They're both learning the challenges. They're both learning the same solutions. Whereas one will go to ours and another to maybe a different philosophy program, something like this. They're going to come home and they're not going to be on the same page and they're not on the same track. And things in life mean different things. Now, you and I have some different perspectives on things. But you and I have also been to a point where, you know, we've had a lot of time to kind of grow and really get to the understandings of our perspective. So we're not going to have a really troublesome issue in the middle of how we communicate.
Right.
But when you have two people who are very, very freshly taking a look at life and how do we now exist, and you're both kind of going in different directions and don't have a whole lot of experience in the application of your new perspective or worldview, that's when it really gets tumultuous and you can really have a lot of troubles.
Well, if you're drinking, do you put aside many of your emotional thoughts or problems?
You bet you
it
do.
kind of gets buried.
You bet.
And so now when you're sober, you have to deal, those things come back to reality.
They've just been sitting there waiting for
Waiting for you to deal with them.
Yep.
Or let me give you a different perspective.
Okay.
In my case, and for those of you listening for the very first time, I went through recovery almost 3 years ago. It'll be 1,000 days next Saturday. And so that's one of the reasons Joe and I do this show. He's in recovery, I'm in recovery, but we went down two different lanes. He went down the lane of St. Gregory's, and I went down the lane of a 12-step program. And so between the two of us, we have a good idea of sharing. But when we get back from the break, little Frankie's hanging onto the phone. I want to talk to him, but also talk about how, some people bury their issues with alcohol. I handled them poorly. I didn't bury them as much as I had things rise to the surface that should have never come to the surface. That when I get smart and I do the next right thing and say the next right thing, those things never come to the surface. So we'll talk about that when we come back live here on The View from a Pew. And thanks for listening to KTIA, Iowa.
Leach, owner and general manager of Service Legends. I brought along a couple of the home comfort heroes.
Hi, I'm Tammy Wells.
I am Nick Wondershide.
I am administrative mmanager.
I am the senior technician
from Service Legends.
It seems like every good thing, when you feel it to the bone that it's good, there's a lot of hard work put behind it. I don't think that you can fake it and have it turn out good.
You know, if we seem like, okay, that's just weird, it's just a furnace, why would you believe so deeply in a furnace? It's not just that, you know, we want to show the world that you can have good service.
Yeah, I mean, it's your home.
You know, it's built into our daily trainings, it's built into our culture, that we're gonna do whatever it takes to have each client say they love us, period.
That's why we spend all the hours in the training that we do. And if we guarantee it's gonna be a good experience for you, or else it's free, what type of work do you think we're gonna do?
There is a guarantee.
Temperature selection guarantee, fixed right or it's free guarantee, comfort guarantee, best value guarantee. All of these guarantees hold us accountable to ensuring that we exceed your expectations. And if for whatever reason we'd fail and we can't make it right, we guarantee all of those guarantees with a 100% money back guarantee.
I mean, if you don't think that your technician can fix it right, are you gonna say that to a client? No.
You don't have to worry about having a technician come to your house.
We drug test, background check all of our team members. We put safe people in your home. Each and every one of our service techs, 400 hours a year in training.
You tell it the minute they walk in the door. They know what they're doing, they've done their homework, and they actually truly care about what you want.
Because at the end of the day, you're the person that makes sure I have a job.
They're gonna be listening. They're gonna wanna know what your challenges are. Then they're gonna come and give you options, and you get to choose.
If I'm there to help and I make it easy and painless, I did my job right that day.
Well, when it comes to your comfort, safety, and your family, you know, you don't necessarily go buy the most expensive, but you get the most bang for your buck.
Oh, it's worth it, because there's a lot of people that will find a way to get it to work right now and then leave and then come back, charge you again, and the cycle just repeats itself. So when I'm out there looking at the furnace, I want to find why it failed today. How can we change the part today with something that you're not going to have to worry about? Is it worth changing the part today? I mean, you can put a lot of money into a furnace. I can fix parts all day. There's good job security in that for me, but is it the right thing for you?
I get a lot of the phone calls of after the technicians are there. They're just in awe. They're like, wow, you guys are great. I mean, I don't even know what to say. You guys are great. Everything you did was perfect. It was great.
Keep going though, I like this.
Just give us a try. I'm gonna take all the risk.
I've got the time to make this right. I've got the support to make it right.
Just check us out.
And if you don't see the value in what we do,
I mean, fixed right or it's free or 100% money back.
Enough said.
the ones in the pew, not pulpit. Come on now, let's reason together. The phone lines are open, so call 855-244-0077. Now, here's J. Michael McCoy.
All right, 22 before the top, Salem Radio Network news at the top, and then Pastor Michael Mudloff with True Blue. I posted on my Facebook page, what are the emotional benefits of being clean and sober? Trish says, okay, the fact that you can remember everything, not be embarrassed over things that may have happened, and see life for its beauty through clear eyes also makes raising kids easier to handle. The benefits of being clean and sober. All right, let's go to the phones here, where little Frankie is standing by. Oh, wait, hold on. We got to wait just a second here. Father Tattoo running the shoe is trying to figure out how the phones work. Just call Ma Bell.
I know how they work. We had a computer down. There, he's on now.
All right, Frankie, you there?
I'm here.
All right, thanks for hanging on. Go ahead.
You got it. So, one of the emotional things that I remember from drinking was when I would go and drink at a bar, and it'd be a dirty little bar, dirty, just not a good place to hang out. And I would sit there and I would drink, and I would look at the mirror across the bar, that dirty old mirror behind the bar, and I would always just think, tomorrow I'm going to take care of this, and this. There's always tomorrow. Like, I lived in this fantasy of what tomorrow was going to be like, as long as I got to keep sitting there and drinking. And I never took care of any of my emotional stuff, never dealt with anything, because I would just go back into that fantasy. And that's where I see a lot of people like me who drink like I did, was I went there so I didn't have to deal with any of that emotional stuff. Now I get to be part of that stuff. Now I get to be part of the decisions in my family and my life, and it seems like I'm a lot better for it when I'm sober and in all my incidents in my life.
Yeah, and you get to be present for not only those things in your life, but in the midst of crisis, you are easier to handle, or things are easier to handle.
And I notice now people come to me, like my family, when they're in the middle of something going on, a crisis in their life. I'm the guy that a lot of people come to now and say, hey, can you help us out? When before I was the one that most people would avoid or not really want me around. And now, because of my not drinking, it seems.
Frankie, how is it different for you and your wife, V? Frankie, are you there? Okay, it looks like we may have lost Frankie.
Well, I tell you, that's resonating, because one of the things that I always think about is that it always sounds weird, is this idea of, people, it's so easy to take the idea of responsibility for granted. And it sounds like this negative thing. It's like, geez, I got responsibilities. But when you've been to a point when you know that nobody would ever consider your opinion or input for anything because you're not responsible and you're viewed as the guy that can't be responsible, when you finally come to a point where you're able to take on those responsibilities and you live up to them, it feels great. Responsibility is a great thing. Mom, if you're listening, jump for joy.
I mean, somebody comes up to you and asks your opinion, and you're shocked that they ask your opinion.
Right, or you know that you can be accountable for things, and you know that you can develop a steadfastness and vision for certain things, and those are really, really fulfilling things to finally come to. And that, boy, I really get what you're saying there, Frankie. I mean, it's a really big deal to know that your family can come to you, and that's awesome. That's absolutely awesome.
Yeah, Frankie, if you're still there, feel free to call back. I don't know. Mine was always that I would impact people's lives in a negative way. I am beginning to, it's interesting because here I am almost 3 years and I'm really starting to see some things that I had never seen before. And one of those is how I would cause chaos with all those people around me, because if they were in chaos, then they were a bubble off plumb. They were off kilter. Yeah. And it was easy for me to, and hear this word carefully, I'm using this word on purpose. It was easier for me to manipulate them. Yeah. And if somebody would have told me 3 years ago that I was a manipulative man, I would have laughed. I wouldn't have gotten mad or defensive. I just would have laughed. I don't manipulate people at all. But now sitting back at 30,000 feet and seeing the way I was, I didn't know I was manipulating. I was causing chaos, so they were all off kilter.
Yeah, that's one of the things that really always shone through bright and clear throughout an intervention process. As an interventionist, I can tell you that dealing with the actual addict was always the easy part. It was always trying to keep a family corralled was always very, very difficult. Or not always, but chances are, if things were going to blow up, that was usually the case. And it was so interesting to watch because every single time, they always had that circular communication pattern that always happened the same way every time they'd had a conversation. But almost always, whoever it is that's struggling with addiction knows exactly what buttons to push at exactly the right time to make sure that it's not about you. They throw the entire thing in disarray, and they're just kind of sneaking out the back while everybody else is arguing and trying to figure out their own junk that's got nothing to do with it. And boy, that's for sure. It's there's a lot of chaos to be found with a family that has an addict in it.
Absolutely, and you just have no idea. I can only speak for myself. I had no idea the chaos that I was causing. I would have told you that I brought peace and tranquility and serenity to the family. But instead, my wife said to me once, this is going to make me cry. My wife said to me once, she said, I'd get out of my car door and I'd go up and I'd reach for that handle. And she said, I'd say a little prayer because I didn't know what Mac I was going to face.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine coming home from work every night rather than relaxing and coming down when you walk into your home, getting tense going, I wonder who I'm going to deal with.
Yeah.
That's just so sad. Let's go back to the phones. Frankie's back on the phone. He must have got you pay your cell phone bill now, Frankie, so you can talk on the phone?
Yeah, I did. I don't know what happened there.
Okay.
I want to blame it on Father Tattoo, so...
How is your relationship with your wife V different now than when you were drinking?
Well, my wife never knew me drinking. Actually, I met her when I first was getting sober 14 years ago.
Okay.
So my wife has never seen me drunk. Now, I relapsed on other things over a couple of years ago, and so she's seen me on other things, but the drinking part of it, so that's like the social drug of it. You know what I mean? She's never been out with me at a party where we both were drinking. Yeah. So,
and I just want to say something here if I can. Frankie, you did not relapse because of weakness. You got a staph infection, went into the hospital, they filled you with drugs, and then when you got out of the hospital, you started having withdrawals. So I hope it's okay that I added that. I don't want somebody to think you just decided to fall off the wagon. You were sick. I mean,
yeah.
I was with you at that time. You were sick. You had a bad staph infection.
Yeah, I had MRSA, which is the superbug. But though, Mac, and I think is that I stopped taking the precautions to make sure that I was not dependent on that medicine anymore, and I stopped that, and that's where the relapse, I believe, happened. So. I take it as a lesson learned, and no matter, and you know me, Mac, if I have 5 years and I take some pills I shouldn't, I start over.
Yeah, I know you do.
And I have no problem with that. So it's not about the time, it's about the level of recovery and the stability that I bring to my household and to my family and friends. When I'm sober, I'm a good, stable human being. When I drink and use, I am the complete opposite. I'm a wretched human being on this earth when it comes to drinking and using. So.
Well, and I've never seen you drunk either, so
no.
I can't verify that.
Yeah, it's bad.
Tammy says, clean and sober living helps me understand it's not about me. And when it's about me, I can be responsible for that. I have been sober for 30 years. Congratulations, Tammy. That's just amazing. I can make a living and raise my kids. My husband was killed 6 years ago, and I didn't make it worse by drinking. Today, I can stand to be in the room as me. And that's saying something. Says a lot. Tammy, thanks for your comments on Facebook. You can join us on Facebook. It's just under Mac, the initial J. Michael McCoy. I don't do anything fancy with the name of the show. It's just me. So jump on Facebook and we'll continue this conversation live with Joe Mines from St. Gregory's on KTIA, Iowa, powered by WebcastOneLive.com.
Max Real Estate Concept Studios. This is Webcast One Live.
Drug and alcohol addiction slowly steals a person's identity, tearing away pieces of their life little by little until one day it seems like the hope of a happy future is gone and there's no chance of getting it back. Here at St. Gregory Retreat Centers, we can assure you that there is hope. Our unique approach to recovery begins with the understanding that the dysfunction and damage caused by addiction can be overcome, not just dealt with. Don't let another day go by. Call St. Gregory today.
If you choose to obey the power of sin, it leads to death. If you choose to obey obedience, it leads to righteousness.
Forgiveness is just the beginning of life in Christ. God wants us to live for Him now.
And because of Jesus Christ, the gospel was preached, and you and I are blessed today because of Abraham. Did you know that? We're blessed.
Experience Truth, 99.3 FM.
If Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of America was your personal webmaster, Tom would filter out all bad debt emails. If Tom was your mailman, you'd never get any debt reduction junk mail. If Tom Coates was a lineman, he'd block any phone calls offering to reduce your credit card debt.
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America, and we're still your best choice for credit counseling. We're local, we're accountable, and we can do more. You make the call when the time's right for you.
When it comes to competition, there really is none for Consumer Credit of America.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Have you ever been told you're not good enough to be a Christian? Well, we have too. Join the conversation. Call 855-244-0077. Now, here's your host, J. Michael McCoy.
10 before the top, Salem Radio Network News, and then Michael Mudloff from True Blue. Joe Mines is in the studio. It's Recovery Monday. Bob Montserrat, the Cat in the Hat, watching the chat, and Father Tattoo running the shoe. I'm like Dr. Seuss today. I'm so proud of myself. Today we're talking about the emotional benefits of being clean and sober. Kimberly says on my Facebook page, having your family back, and I would say that's a powerful thing, and yet it was so interesting. My grandson made the comment to my wife the other day that he never remembered Grandpa being drunk. And my wife, God bless her, looked at him and said, no, remember when he was asleep in the chair? That was what Grandpa did. Because I didn't rant and rave. I mean, a very few outbursts. If I was with people, I was ornery. I mean, I was driving you nuts, I was not the guy in the corner with the lampshade. I wasn't swearing and cussing. I was ornery. I was picking on you.
And so how is this different from today?
Or
a comment from the shoe is wondering.
I would be asleep. So, but as we've been talking about today, there are many marriages and many relationships that don't make it when one person gets sober because they have no idea how to adjust to that person. I would tell you that it took my wife and I probably better than a year. And I'd almost say 2 years, but better than a year to finally find that new groove of ours, which was, as you said, Joe, which was kind of our old groove because we were together 9 years before I ever started drinking. I didn't start drinking until I was 34 years old, almost 35. Which is just bizarre. But anyway, it is what it is. Now, talk to me about what happens when both parties go through treatment and get sober at the same time.
Well, I'll tell you what. A few weeks ago, I don't make it out there as often as I'd like, but a few weeks ago, I went out for a graduation. And in that graduation, there was actually two couples that had gone through the program simultaneously.
Okay.
And, we have different facilities, so...
they were miles
women
apart.
Women are in one and men are in the other.
Did they even see each other during that time?
Very, very little.
Okay.
We really try to make sure that each person is really focusing on what it is that they need to do, because we are talking about a whole life that needs to change, and we got a lot to do in 8 weeks or 7 weeks. So we're going to need your undivided attention throughout that time.
Yeah.
And also, a lot of times they're not ready to face each other realistically until we really get to that point where it's okay. Now let's really combine what you've been learning here with what does it look like now, and go out to be the hands and feet of what you've learned. But the way it worked was the women had their graduation, and they have it a little bit earlier in the day. And I had arrived at the male campus about 10 minutes before graduation started, and they had come over. They had already graduated the program, and they had come over to see their husbands graduate. And I tell you what, it was just one of the most amazing things that I've seen in a long time. I'm usually in the offices in Des Moines. I don't have my hands in the actual change that occurs as much as I used to. And it's so easy to forget how big of a deal this is. We're talking, this is your whole life. And when a couple gets to do it together, now we've really got something. But just their comments was an incredible thing to see. But through our graduate mentoring and the recovery coaches is really where we hear most of the tail end stuff. How are people doing? They're the ones that are reaching out, and they're on the phone with our graduates each week for 12 months after they graduate. But they're the ones that are really involved long-term after they've been in the residential portion.
Would you call those people their sponsor?
No.
No. So it's not like that?
No.
Okay.
No.
Go ahead.
It's a recovery coach. It's it's a mentor. But what we're really finding is they just have so much more of a fluid transition period. When they go back home, they've each, really, there's common verbiage for one, but also they've really worked on, let's take a look at what does a point B look like? And it's amazing, 2 separate facilities, mind you, how almost identical that recovery life plan looks like, because they will be building out their goals, and this is what I want my future to look like. It's amazing how similar it is. And it just goes back. Truth is on our hearts. We know the right ways and we know the wrong ways. There's not that much gray area. And seeing those things come together, they're really going to be much closer to being on the same page than they would have had they gone through different experiences. They have a like viewpoint of what their challenges will be.
Yeah, my wife and I weren't on the same page at all.
Yeah.
I can remember less than a month in, my wife reminded me that this was not her recovery, this was mine.
Yeah.
Because I was trying to bring her in and teach her the language, and I was all excited, and what do they call the red euphoria or whatever it was. And CJ was, God bless her, but she was just, I'm not going to get drug into your program.
Yeah.
I don't have a drinking problem, you do. And she didn't. There was no denial there.
Yep.
And that hurt for a while. That really did hurt, because I wanted to share with her my experiences. In fact, in the beginning, I would have what I called victories, and that would be where I wouldn't say the wrong thing. I wouldn't react the wrong way. And I'd want to share those victories with her, and she'd say, if I see victories, I'll let you know. you know my bride.
God bless marriage.
I'll let you know, So anyway, all right. Well, Joe, I appreciate you being in here today, as always, from St. Gregory's. And let me just, for a second, just talk about this. You sit here and listen to this program, and somebody in the back of your mind came up. I know they did. Because most of the time, this program does not benefit the addict or the alcoholic. It benefits you. Maybe you're the enabler. Maybe you're the codependent. Maybe you're just the really sad and lonely dad or mom or sister or spouse who has to watch someone tragically destroy their lives with drugs and alcohol. There is hope. And I hate to sound like an info commercial, but that hope is a phone number away, and that's St. Gregory's. This is an Iowa-based company, different facilities for men and for women, all here in central Iowa. And the difference it will make in their lives is just that, life-changing differences. And I hate to put it this way, but at this point, you don't have much more to lose. Maybe the relationship's already ruined. Maybe the career has been destroyed. Maybe there are walls built between siblings or fathers and daughters that you don't think ever could be replaced. Well, they can. God will restore those relationships. That's what he wants, is restoration. But you got to get the help you want. So go to the Google, look them up, St. Gregory's. And the only other thing I ask you to do for that individual that you love, that you're thinking of right now, is pray.